Good afternoon, members of the media and people of Bermuda. I'm joined here today by the Deputy Premier and Minister of Home Affairs, and also the Minister of National Security. It has been 1 week since the government of Bermuda experienced a sophisticated and deliberate cyber attack. Since last Thursday's discovery and confirmation of the attack, impacted government systems are slowly and efficiently being restored. Additionally, as I mentioned in Monday's press conference, the government is building a new network with enhanced protection and security to mitigate the risk of future attacks. It is important to reiterate that not all government systems were impacted during this attack. However, all systems were immediately taken offline and network use was strategically abandoned to preserve system functionality and contain and isolate the threat from the persons who attacked the government of Bermuda. The government's focus has been on safely restoring system functionality, particularly those systems that support providing services to the public. On Monday, I confirmed the engagement of overseas experts to support the work of the government's Department of Information and Digital Technology. The work done to date has significantly advanced the restoration and recovery efforts. Some email functionality is already being returned, and systems not impacted in the attack have been brought back online and are operational. The nature of this sophisticated attack has made it difficult to isolate what data may and may not have been compromised versus data that may have been encrypted, thereby preventing access. However, our team of experts are working through the matter so we can have a full forensic account of what took place. What has emerged is that the government of Bermuda is one of a series of recent attacks aimed at other governments and large corporations worldwide. But I must state this, that it must be clear that this is an ongoing investigation, so I cannot share any further details at this time. We know that there has been feedback about the government only sharing limited detail thus far, and I absolutely understand that there are still questions that the public would like answered about this incident. However, it is essential that we maintain the confidentiality of specific operational information to safeguard the ongoing investigation and to protect the security of our systems. As the community can appreciate, this remains a very sensitive matter. To be clear, we have been providing daily updates and assurances both internally and externally to our public officers and to our stakeholders. We have also provided a mechanism where regular updates on our services are readily available at gov.bm and distributed to the public via the government's social media platforms and government WhatsApp as recently as 3 p.m. today. Public officers have been updated on the safest means to provide services to the public that require digital systems. They have also been working diligently to ensure that vital services and government obligations are met as we continue our restoration efforts. The monthly payroll has been actioned as scheduled this week. Financial assistance payments are being made. Vehicles are being licensed, albeit manually, and a full array of services are being delivered. More government phone systems are being brought back online, and it's expected that the main government switchboard will be operational hopefully by tomorrow, but certainly by Monday. Access to the government's internal financial systems is also being restored and will be turned on once this process is completed. The House of Assembly systems are being worked on today and to make sure that the Parliament can sit as scheduled tomorrow. I must pay tribute to the women and men of the Department of Information and Digital Technology and the entire public service. These public officers have been working day and night since last week to restore government systems and ensure that the government continues to function effectively for the people of Bermuda. The minister responsible for IDT, Minister Campbell, and myself have personally visited the teams that are working in our data centers, often after having pulled double shifts to ensure that this attack is met with the resilience that Bermuda is known for. An unrivaled level of resilience has been demonstrated these last few days, just as has been shown with the challenges that this government and our public officers have faced in recent years. Thanks to their hard work and dedication, we continue to deliver the wide variety of services for which the government is responsible. The process to return our government systems to full capacity must be done in a safe and orderly fashion. And on behalf of the government of Bermuda, I must continue to express my appreciation and gratitude to the public for their patience. I also must thank our union partners for their collaboration and the private sector for the support that they have offered and the support that they continue to give. This has been a long and challenging week for many, but I'm pleased to say that the sleepless nights and the full team effort from the cabinet, public service executive, and especially public officers are yielding results, and we are making strides towards restoring our systems and safeguarding the data that has been the subject of this unprecedented attack. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
You mentioned that other folks have been targeted along with us. Can you tell us any of them?
I mean, just a simple Google search will reveal all the governments that have recently suffered attacks. I mean, a couple of days ago, I think that there was Sony. I mean, major corporations such as the world's foremost digital companies, Twitter, Meta, Samsung, national governments, local governments throughout the world. Unfortunately, this is an area that governments have to take account for. Organizations have to take account for, and oftentimes it must be understood these persons don't necessarily come in the front door. There are ways and sophisticated methods, sometimes social engineering and others, in order to get persons to reveal information that they may not reveal. But the fact is that we are using this crisis, I'll call it at this time, because it is very serious. And I'm not trying to undermine the serious nature of what we are experiencing, to make sure that we accelerate the work that was underway to build a new and safer and more secure network. And the teams are working with that in conjunction with foremost international experts.
Thanks, sir. I heard what you said at the start, but I have to ask again. Can you say if it's a ransomware attack?
So I know that persons want to have specifics on what is going on. So there's two things I want to tell you. The first thing is that we must assume that the persons who attack the government of Bermuda are listening to my comments. They certainly are reading what you print inside of your newspapers. And so what I will say is that our focus has been working closely with cybersecurity experts and law enforcement to recover the affected data and to secure our systems.
Right. I mean, some of the questions may elicit the same response, but fair enough. We had heard that there might have been a cyber attack on government systems around 18 months ago, and that you were advised that cybersecurity needed to be improved urgently at that time. Can you confirm that and say if that was acted on?
What I can say is that the government has been subject to a number of attacks, just like any other business in Bermuda. You can talk to local banking institutions, you can talk to local companies, you can talk, that's what happened. I'm just saying, that is what happens. This is not, I don't want to say it's unusual. It's not unusual. These things do happen. And that is the reason why you have to make sure to upgrade your defenses. But when you speak about 18 months ago, there have been security improvements that have happened since then, and those security improvements continue. I mean, there was significant investment that has been made in security. I know that the persons are focused on building out new networks, operations centers. We put in new training programs and other things internally that lock persons out in case they do not complete them, to make sure they complete them and run through. Those are things that you expect in major companies, and that is what we're making sure that we put in place the government of Bermuda as we learn lessons and as we implement a more enhanced cybersecurity posture.
Right. On Monday, you reckoned that potentially it could be 2 weeks until we're all up and running again. Is it potentially still?
I think that's what I had said in my last statement, and nothing that I've been provided to date has changed. I mean, the fact is that they are making progress in restoring various systems, recovering certain data that may have been encrypted, and so it's been a challenge. But I think it's important to note that this effect did not only affect our servers, but they also affected data that would be on people's desktops as well.
So we had a story today posing questions over the government's cybersecurity policy and readiness. There was a reference to a report 4 years ago that included the line that Bermuda does not have a formal framework for monitoring cyber threats and for preventing, detecting, and mitigating against cyber attacks. Can you say, do we now have that formal framework in place, and what it is and when it kicked in?
What I can say is that there's been numerous updates since those various reports. I think the Minister of National Security did give another statement in the House of Assembly. We did form a cybersecurity unit. Those persons are responsible for setting the policy for national critical infrastructure, as well as the government of Bermuda, and we are operating from our cybersecurity response plan. But as with all things, I mean, you just have to understand, Jonathan, like, you know, you look at major corporations that exists inside the digital space. They still can encounter these challenges. You want to make sure that your systems are good, but there are always chances for those things to be infiltrated. And our job is to make sure that we learn from, enhance, and go forward from this to make sure we have an even more enhanced security posture as we go forward, as these attacks are becoming more complex, more sophisticated, and certainly more disruptive.
I mean, I clicked on one once, so I do understand it. That formal framework, is it possible to see a copy of it or a summary of it?
Well, there are some things that can be released to the public, and there's some things that can't. When the minister gave his particular statement, there were not all things that were able to be put inside the public domain. Because, of course, if there are things inside the public domain that are not necessarily where we need to be, that may certainly invite other actors. However, the public can rest assured that there has been activity in regards to upgrading our cybersecurity defenses, learning from previous incidents and activities, and that will continue in this case and instance. The one thing is that in that past instance where something happened, all matters were just restored from backups to make sure we got things running. Now that we've experienced this significant disruption, the decision has been made to accelerate the work, to build out a new environment, to make sure that as we add people back, they're added to a new, more secure environment that is more resilient from these type of attacks.
So we do have a cybersecurity incident response team in place?
Absolutely.
Okay. And will cybersecurity...
And we've been following the incident response plan that they had.
The UK Home Office worked with Bermuda on cybersecurity, and they delivered a report in March, apparently. Can you tell us what that report said?
I think the Minister of National Security spoke that matter in Parliament, and so that you can look at the items of which the Minister said in that statement. I think it's a matter of public record.
Right. In terms of what we spent improving cybersecurity recently, can you tell us, do you have a figure on that and where we've been putting our dollars for that?
Do I have a figure specifically on cybersecurity? No. What I can say is that about 3 years ago, we doubled the capital expenditure budgets that were inside of the Information and Digital Technologies Department in the recognition that there were upgrades needed for our work and upgrades on work needed for bolstering our cybersecurity defenses. And so whereas those things used to be at about $1.5 to $2 million a year, now they're $3.5 million a year of investment in capital spending on various infrastructure projects. And so I know that the priority on last year and this year has been boosting security. I'm sure that there will be reviews. I'm sure that when we have to report to Parliament in regards to this, because external consultants and other things will cost additional funds, there will be supplementary, and the cabinet may need, upon advice, to have an additional supplementary estimate for additional capital that may be needed to make sure that we continue to bolster our defenses. So those things will be seen. But the historical record is that we have doubled or seen record investment into capital spending for government IT departments. And if you would refer back to budget statements as well, I think that a significant amount of our capital acquisitions is for IT systems. So a perfect example is that, for instance, the Registrar of Companies system did not go down. It was up. Those matters are still continuing. There are some challenges there, of course, with the email that's attached to it, but we do build separate systems that are resilient and secure, especially when we're dealing with the automated transfer of information to international organizations and governments.
So you said we're building a new system. How does that work? Can you tell us, do we need new physical computers, or just maybe if you could generate...
It's the network and the way, and so I'm not a network expert, though persons may regard me as all-knowing in things in IT. I haven't done, hands-on IT for about 10 years. But if we are speaking about building a new network, there are the work and the advice which we've had on the various reports on what to do to make sure that the network is more resilient and secure. If there is, for instance, someone who happens to click on a phishing link and there's something to minimize the spread and disruption on that and other various servers, variously segmenting, multiple VLANs, et cetera, these things get very technical. And so we're making sure we go through that work right now. It is something that the IDT was planning on, and now we are accelerating that work.
Can you tell us how how these hackers got into our system in the first place?
So, as I had indicated, we have a team of international experts that are conducting a full forensic audit, and the full forensic audit has not been completed. We will be completely transparent with this, and what I will say is that at the end of this when we get the system restoration, I have no doubt that there will be an inquiry in Parliament. I have no doubt there will be questions, and we'll be able to provide those answers underneath the oversight responsibilities of the Parliament, because that is what the government must do. I have met with the opposition leader, and the opposition leader, though understanding the situation, has said, though I understand the situation the government is in, when this is done, we will ensure that we will hold the government to account. And I told him I expect nothing different, because that is a sign of a proper functioning and healthy democracy.
You mentioned outside agencies. Can you say who they are and how are they physically here, like how they're helping us?
So what I can say is that we have to protect the specifics and operational details of it. Of course, we must imagine that whomever attacked the government of Bermuda is listening to our communications, and it would not be prudent to identify what the persons that we have engaged to assist us, as they may be familiar with that and may want to try to work around. So we're trying our best to make sure, not purposely withholding information, but recognizing that we need to make sure that we're able to recover our data and secure our systems and not possibly give any further clues to those persons who attacked the government of Bermuda.
We touched on Monday reputational issues. I have seen it going international on international wire services, and court decisions could be delayed. We've got two major overseas bankruptcies moving through the courts now. Does this threaten our status as a jurisdiction, or if we recover quickly, is it a plus for us? I mean, what does this do for us?
I think the measure of Bermuda is the fact that we are able to be resilient through challenges. This is a challenge that many governments, many companies have experienced, and we must continue to work through that process. What I would say is that from an international basis, we have, there was a phone call with the OECD earlier today inside the Ministry of Finance, reassuring them of the stability and security of the various systems that we have built for international interchange. So what I would say is, though it's not ideal, we will recover. We will make sure that our systems are more stronger and more secure, and I think that the international business community and also our international partners can have confidence that we keep the protection of their data very seriously.
So we heard that it was 10 p.m. on Wednesday, and we spotted it on Thursday morning. How come the software didn't spot it when it first came in?
So what I can tell you is that these are very sophisticated attacks. So the same question, I think, could be asked to Samsung, to Sony, to Twitter, I'm just saying. So I don't want to trivialize it, but the fact is that we are dealing with a more sophisticated type of cyber attacks that are being experienced throughout the world, that are attacking the systems of some of the companies and and jurisdictions that have significant high levels of security and have made multi-million-dollar investments in securing their infrastructure. Some of these things are a challenge, but we are doing a full forensic audit to identify what has taken place, and we will be able to have those matters, and I'm certain that there will be some type of thing in Parliament, and as much as those things can be shared, we will make sure that those are shared with members of the Parliament in any inquiry or questions that they may have in the future.
So we were thankful. We asked about personal information. We did get some details back, so thanks for that. It included a line that we're in compliance with all legal and regulatory requirements regarding data breaches. The thing is, without PIPA in effect, is there anything that we have that we are in compliance with, or PIPA doesn't yet require us to notify about breaches because it's not kicked in? Are we acting as if it is in effect? So
it would be responsible of the government of Bermuda to make sure that we notify persons if their data has been compromised. What I can say is that as of the update this morning, there has been no forensic evidence that has been found that has said that our data has been exfiltrated, which means that does not mean that that may not be discovered, but they are going through the process of careful and significant forensic investigation so that we can identify what has happened. What I will say is that if there is a data breach that is confirmed, we will of course contact affected persons and or organizations with information and guidance on protective measures. And for all persons, whether or not this happened or not, we recommend vigilance against phishing attempts and encourage regular password updates. And if you do have so, enable two-factor authentication.
Is there any thought to, given it's still, I believe, 50 months until PIPA kicks in, that we might be able to fast track it?
I don't think that that's part of a consideration here. I think what we will do is that we will act in the best interest of our citizens and the person who interact with the government of Bermuda, and it will be responsible to make sure that we do inform those persons if, in case it is confirmed that there has been a data breach.
So I heard today that couriers were telling us that they can't pick up goods. Are you aware if that's the case, and is that a problem that's more widespread in terms of what we can bring in?
I haven't heard that specifically. However, if there is anything that you wish to relay and ask a specific question, I'm sure that the Department of Customs, the Ministry of Finance, will be able to provide an answer to that question.
I just got a few more for you, sir. Are you able to say what kind of personal data the government has on its files? Are there records on most of us as residents, and do they contain personal information?
I am relatively certain that clearly there will be a significant amount of data on our systems, but I don't want to speculate on that. We are going through the forensic process so that we can identify what, if anything, was exfiltrated. At this point in time, as of the report that I had at 9 a.m. this morning with a briefing from our international team, they have not been able to uncover any forensic evidence of exfiltration at this time.
All right, so last one for me. People have been asking, how did the phone system end up getting affected?
Again, this is a serious cyber attack. So phones are run off of something called Dynamic Host Control Protocol, DHCP, which is hosted on Windows servers, which were impacted. Those matters were recovered as of today. Phone service is being restored, and we have to go to individual spaces. Wi-Fi in government buildings is back up. As I said, there are certain spaces where people are being brought back online and operations are being returned. Our focus is firstly TCD, as it's the end of the month, and there's a lot of persons that are down there trying to go through, so we wanted to make sure that we can get those matters up as soon as possible. The next focus will be on the E1 system, the government's financial system, and those particular matters, and we'll continue to work through the system recovery. Clearly, for the Minister of the Department of Planning, will be a very important one, but as I said, they're working on the restoration. We've been able to start restoring services, and we're going to continue to do that.
So thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
And I do understand that the investigation is ongoing at this time, but at this stage, are you confident that the perpetrators will be identified and prosecuted considering the severity of cybercrime?
So I can't necessarily speak to that, but I think that question will be best addressed to the Bermuda Police Service, who handling that aspect of the investigation. The government of Bermuda's perspective in this is focusing on the restoration of services and matters related to investigation, cooperation with international law enforcement persons and others will be a matter for the Bermuda Police Service. I would expect that they would do that type of follow-up. They are communicating with the National Crime Agency out to the United Kingdom. As you know, the police do fall under the governor's responsibilities and not the government, but I would firmly expect that is what they are engaged in.
Of course. And you noted that the government is building a new network to mitigate future threats. Are you able to share the timeline?
That's being accelerated, so the new network, I think, has been completely built now. Of course, these things can be done on a virtual basis. There are more things that may have to be done insofar as additional server purchases, figuring out whether we can wipe and use our old servers and new servers. Those conversations that are happening, but the one thing that we want to do is to ensure that whatever we are bringing up on a more secure and newer network. We have international experts that are advising on the infrastructure, the things of which we should put in place, the enhanced monitoring tools due to the evolving nature of cyber threats of which we're experiencing. I'll be happy to try to get a timeline for any if you want to send through a message probably next week to the Minister Campbell, who's a minister for IDT. I'm sure he'll try to get a response for you.
Thank you. And you stated that monthly payroll is scheduled for the end of the week. Are the payroll systems back up and running properly?
The payroll systems are not back up and running properly. We have been working with banks. E1, which is our payroll system, is currently being restored. The report that I got this morning is that they were able to, remember, let me reverse. At the beginning of my reports, you would have heard me say that not all of our systems were impacted. Our E1 system, which is the main government system, was not impacted by the attack. However, because all things were taken offline, that of course is reduced access. As we are now bringing things back safely, because there are a significant number of affected computers. The estimate is, I don't want to give the wrong number, but there's a quite a number of desktop computers that have been infected as well, as this was something that was set to spread out through the network, set overnight when people are leaving. So some people leave their computers off at night, goes in, infects their computers, come in the morning, all of a sudden find their computers infected. That is what has taken place. So it's going to take a while to restore, but the E1 system itself was not impacted. We are getting access restored to the E1 systems, as there are things that are used to access the E1 systems that were impacted, but the data that is on our financial system, our payroll, the things that do our accounting, all that stuff was not impacted. That data is safe, that data is secure, that data is there. There's no evidence of exfiltration of that data, and we are going to bring those systems back online. So payroll, in the exact same way, has been run with old payroll data, taking into account the new persons that have been added in over the last month to make sure that those persons will be paid as well, and we'll have to reconcile some things afterwards. But the expectation is that E1 should be up by Monday.
So you can confirm that all government workers, including full-time, part-time, and contractors, will be paid this month?
What I can say is that for the ones that are outliers, Ministry of Finance is making arrangements. For instance, there's some people who are not paid by direct deposit. There's some people that are paid by check, for instance. And so we are working through that process. But the Ministry of Finance, the dedicated team with compensation and benefits and finance and accounts in general are taking into account all of those things. And if there's anyone who does have a challenge or who has been contacted, they should certainly get in contact with their head of the department who have the information to make sure that it can get escalated so they can be paid.
Thank you. And considering those outliers, if anyone was to be affected disadvantagedly, is government encouraging banks or other financial institutions to exercise leniency with public officers who may not be able to meet financial commitments?
So what I would say is I think that those situations will be few, far between and isolated, and I would certainly expect if there's anyone that did have a challenge that those things were reported and those things will be swiftly rectified. At the latest I can imagine those payments would happen on Monday or Tuesday if they haven't gone through today. But from that perspective, banks have been working with us. They've been very good. They've been running things, helping us to make sure we get these things done, and I'm grateful for their assistance.
And going back to cybersecurity, when is the last time a stress test or vulnerability assessment was performed on government systems?
My expectation is those will be performed at a regular basis. I mean, we do have a cybersecurity team, we do have security officers, et cetera, all the rest. But we have to remember that a stress test and those type of things are focused on external threats, the old type of threats that used to exist, where, you know, there will be a denial of service attack, they'll try and go through the firewall, try to get through those things. That's not the nature of the way that cyber attacks work nowadays. They use far more sophisticated methods, social engineering, ways, phishing to get through the back door, and it's those type of things we're focused on. We are doing a forensic audit. We will have that information, and when that is completed, we will be able to be in a better position to answer definitively.
Does this attack impact the implementation of PIPA?
I don't believe so. What I do know is that the government will act in a responsible fashion, and if it is confirmed that data was actually taken from government systems, we will be able to identify that through this forensic audit that we're doing. As I said, we brought in a foremost team of international experts who have experience on this in some of the recent large-scale attacks, and what we are going to do is to make sure that if there is any evidence of data that has been exfiltrated from the government system, we will responsibly notify those affected parties.
Just lastly, what will happen in the event that government cannot regain access to its data?
That would be a challenge, but thankfully the teams have been working and we are making significant progress. As I said, we're bringing up some systems today. We were able to bring up the DHCP server and other matters today to restore phone service and other matters, and so we're continuing to work those process. I do not believe that we'll be in that situation. If we were, that would be certainly catastrophic, but thankfully due to the measures that are in place and the things that are taking place with this team of experts, we are in a space where we are beginning to see light towards the end of the tunnel.
Thank you so much.
No problem, thank you. All right, ministers, thank you. Members of the public, thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. This is a very difficult time and challenging time for the government, but I'd like to end by reiterating my thanks for the patience of citizens during this challenge, the hard work of public officers, the cooperation of the unions in the public sector, the unions and the private sector, and most importantly, the dedicated public officers of our information and digital technologies teams, our communications teams, all those persons who are working around the clock to ensure that we can restore services. Have a wonderful